Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalen Centre. Today I'm doing the annual report for 2018 for the Signs and Seasons, outlining some of the key events that are taking place, but also the overall theme for this year. So, for 2018, one of the key themes is going to be polarisation and transition. The reason I say this is Jupiter's going to be in Scorpio for most of the year. He's not going to change signs until November. And Scorpio is all about polarising in order to purify something, so it's separating out the light and shadow, so the positive and negative ends of the polarity, and challenging us to let go of the shadow side of ourselves and to kind of die to the personal consciousness in order to prepare ourselves for transpersonal consciousness. So this is, by transpersonal, I simply mean that we acknowledge that we're more than just an isolated individual. We're part of something much greater than ourselves, but we're still responsible for ourselves, and the quality of the work we do for ourselves will have an effect on the world around us. But we have to go into the shadow side of ourselves first in order to do this. And Jupiter is highlighting the fact that if we want to tap into grace, or if we want to have that flow of abundance in our lives, we need to tackle our shadow side first. So it's going inwards and looking at our fears. Where do we have fears around things like power? What is our relationship with power? Do we define power as a negative thing, or a positive thing, or do we see it as a neutral thing, which is and it's only bad or good depending on how it's wielded? And it's also seeing, how do we feel powerful, and how do we define it? Do we see power as our ability to exert influence over our environment? Do we see it as our ability to control our environment? Or do we see power as something that comes from the inside, and that if we can connect with that internal power, we can just detach from the world around us. We don't feel the need to control everything. We don't feel the need to try and have power over other people, because we have that sense of power coming from inside us, and therefore we don't feel like we have to control others to feel powerful. We already feel that sense of power. But that core of power lies on the other side of our fears, and for us to connect with it, we have to work through whatever fears arise within us, in whatever form they take. But the most common fear that we have to overcome is the fear of death, because with Scorpio, one of its themes is death. But understand, this isn't the final death of the body. This is just the death of the ego. It's the death of the personal self, in order to allow us to tap into that higher consciousness that transcends death, transcends the ego, and transcends ordinary reality. So first we have to face our fears and understand what fears do we hold on to, and why do we hold on to them. And there's also looking at where do we project our shadow onto other people, because a common mechanism of the ego is to project its fears onto other people in order to avoid dealing with that fear, because the ego is based on conditioning. It's not, and is therefore an illusion as such. It's a necessary one. We need to be able to interact with the world around us, otherwise we would just be ghosts. But we have to do this internal work for ourselves of transforming our fears and transforming the relationship with the ego. So the ego isn't trying to control everything and try to seek power outside ourselves. We recognise that the power is already within us. We just have to calm the ego down, become present in our lives. So rather than dwelling on the past or fearing about the future, it's learning to become anchored in the present moment, because this is where all transformation, all power truly resides, and it's the only place where truth can reside as well. So part of the challenge this year is to become present in our lives. It's to learn to stop thinking and worrying about everything around us, stop worrying about what's going to happen with our lives. It's learn to trust ourselves and develop a greater faith that there's more going on around us than we're aware of, and that there are ways out of difficult situations. We're not as trapped as we think we are. We just believe we're trapped in a certain situation, but we all have the capacity to change our perceptions of things by trying to expand the mind and see where there's things that we haven't noticed. Because the brain has its own master filter, but it's programmed by our beliefs and programmed by desires to some extent. So if we can reflect on our beliefs and see how they affect our perception filter, we can modify it so that instead of looking for all the challenges, all the obstacles, we look for all the opportunities for growth. We look for all the opportunities to expand our comfort zone by stepping out of it, and see that for us to grow, we have to face what's uncomfortable. We have to embrace things that are uncomfortable to begin with, because if we don't deal with anything that's uncomfortable, we'll never grow. You think about muscles when you first exercise them and they've not been worked with before. We feel a lot of soreness and discomfort, but we become much stronger as a result of pushing those muscles and putting them under stress in order to strengthen them. But if we don't get out of accept the fact that things will be uncomfortable to begin with, then we won't make any progress. But that's the polarization things. Now, the transition side of things I'm referring to, Chiron and Uranus are both making an initial movement into the next sign along from where they are. Chiron is changing signs briefly in April when Chiron moves out of Pisces and into Aries. Now, Chiron in Pisces has been all about that, dealing with the wound of disconnection. So when we feel disconnected to source, or disconnected with the universal consciousness, with God, call it whatever term you feel comfortable with, if we're disconnected from this, then we look for substitutes to try and feel that sense of connection. And this is what can drive addiction. So it's things like, for some people it may be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be other people in terms of codependency, or it could be sugary foods, or anything that when we use it, it modifies our consciousness for a moment and allows us to overcome that sense of disconnection, if only briefly. But these are only substitutes. They won't create true connection with the higher power. And if we don't seek a different healthy way to connect with the higher power, then we will resort to methods of trying to connect with energy that are dysfunctional and often damaging and self-destructive. So meditation, or learning to meditate and commit to it, has been a key theme of overcoming this particular wound, because meditation is a healthy way of connecting with that higher power, that higher energy, and it's unlike addictions, the connection only gets stronger through meditation, whereas with things like drugs, we may get a very powerful connection to begin with, but over time, as the body develops tolerance and resistance to these substitutes, we have to take increasingly high doses just to get the same effect. With meditation, if we can spend time and practice this with meditation, we can overcome this feeling of disconnection, and we can connect with that higher power, that higher spirit, call it what you want, and this allows us to feel that sense of love and belonging that we all need, that feeling of connection, and the ability to feel empathy towards other people, because now that we have that connection, we're filling ourselves up with this higher energy to the point where we're so full it's overflowing, and because it's overflowing from us now, it's now helping people in a way that isn't going to drain us, because it's energy pouring out of us and overflowing the cup, if you like, that is helping other people, rather than having to drain our cup in order to help someone and leaving us feeling exhausted and deprived of that connection. But with the movement into Aries, this will mark a change in focus from overcoming the wound's disconnection to focusing on the wound to the I am. So what I mean by this is, Chiron in Aries can manifest as a feeling that we don't have our own, or we're denied a sense of personal identity or our own unique sense of self-identity. And sometimes we can end up trying to take action or assert ourselves in ways to try and confirm or affirm that we do have a sense of identity, but we have to, because if we were denied a sense of individual identity as kids, then we'll always feel ignored or overlooked or not valued or not seen as a unique person in our own right. But at the end of the day, we have to create this feeling for ourselves. We have to work with ourselves to understand who we are and what is our own unique spark of identity. Who are we without other people's conditioning? So it's learning to connect or create our own sense of personal identity based on who we are, not who we've been led to believe we are. Because as let's face it, we all get conditioned or get a lot of conditioning over the course of our lives, and this conditioning, it may well have been done for us with good intentions, but if we're being conditioned to be something that we're not, then it creates this disconnect between our sense of self-identity and who we think we are, because who we think we are is based on what we've been told rather than connecting to who we are. So it's with Chiron, we'll backtrack into Pisces again later in the year when it's retrograde, so we'll have a final flourish of overcoming the wound of disconnection before Chiron fully moves out of Pisces and will not return there for over 40 years. But Chiron moving through Aries is going to be an 8-year transit, and this is a time where we have to work on our own individual spark and work on our own courage and learn to take action that's based on who we are, not a reaction to other people. So it's overcoming the tendency for reactive behaviour and becoming more responsive behaviour and actions that are based on our own desires, our own unique goals. Now the other change is going to be Uranus moving into Taurus in May. But again, Uranus will backtrack into Aries during the course of his retrograde, so we'll have another period of digging down into our sense of identity, of going deeper than the shallow form of identity that the ego uses, and understanding that core sense of self at a deeper level. But with Uranus going to Taurus, we're moving to the next stage of consciousness from the spark, which is grounding our identity. But this is also dealing with things like resources. Now, obviously, when we think of resources, we often think of money, and that may well be a major theme of change in the collective consciousness, is a change in finance, a change of how the money system works. But resources is much deeper than that. Our true resources lie within us, and the greatest resource we have in our lives is ourselves. So Uranus' passage through Taurus may well challenge us to awaken to the fact that we have far more skills and resources within us than we may give ourselves credit for, but we have to do the work ourselves to dig these resources up, to connect with them and to develop them further. So it may well be that we've been used to using our resources in one way. There's actually a much better way to utilise them to achieve greater results. And Taurus also deals with things like self-worth and self-esteem. So with Uranus passing through this area, we may have Uranus may come across as chaos if we're not awake to his energies and we're not open to our intuition and insights. So part of the challenge, if we've closed ourselves off to the insights that our intuition is giving, is to learn to slow down and connect with our intuition and let it guide us and see how we can better utilise our resources. How can we, and Taurus also can deal with things like ecology. It's the land, so it's how do we use our material resources and how can we become better at using them? How can we become more skillful and more efficient with the resources that we have? And how can we use ourselves as a resource for our goals rather than relying on material things, relying on other people? So part of the challenge of Uranus' 7-year transit through Taurus will be to transform our relationship with our resources, our material possessions, and to learn to detach from them as well, so to understand our material possessions are not who we are, and clinging on to our possessions may lead to stagnation. But it may also be looking at, because Uranus is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and this is a humanitarian sign, and Taurus is square to this, but this may be a period of looking at how can we utilise our resources in a humanitarian way. How can we push our perception or our understanding or our uses of resources to a wider perspective, and understand how we can share our own resources for a humanitarian vision within, this could be within individual groups that we're part of, that we have a strong investment in, and we want to help that group to grow and to achieve its objectives. But on a humanitarian level, this may be time to realise that if we keep going down the materialistic route, we're just going to destroy everything around us, because the material possessions, they don't just magic out of thin air, they utilise energy from other parts of the world. So it may be looking at how we utilise resources, but also are we able to renew or recycle our existing resources and possessions, rather than having to keep buying new stuff or keep pursuing rampant materialism. And with Saturn going through Capricorn for the next 2.5 years, this also kind of reinforces this, because Saturn in Capricorn tends to be quite conservative. It's paring back any extravagant urges that we may normally have. It's stripping away what isn't necessary and striving towards a more simple approach to things. So rather than going over the top, being really complicated about things, is a time of simplifying, to understand how can we use what we already have to achieve our goals, rather than constantly blowing money extravagantly on new things which we may not actually need. We may just need to look at how we approach the use of our existing possessions and resources in order to achieve our goals, rather than constantly trying to invest in the next best thing. If we can reevaluate our resources and see how can we make better use of them, how can we simplify things rather than making things overly complicated, then this may well bring greater freedom through simplifying things rather than having complexity all the time. And this simplicity may well free up us more of our spare time so we can do things that we want to do. But we have to look at how we utilise our resources first. And if we constantly trying to build up our sense of identity through having possessions, then this side of things may also be challenged. Just seeing that, well, if this possession is taken away, are you diminished? Have you changed? Or have you just, as a physical item, just gone from your life? So detachment from our possessions or our material resources is another theme that we're starting from May and will continue over the next 7 years, so that rather than living in a materialistic paradigm, we start moving towards a more utilitarian, rather than the rampant or the rugged individualist that's been promoted for years. We're going through a period where if we want to achieve things, we've got to realise that we share the planet with the people, and for any major goals to take place, we have to start working together to achieve things, rather than working as a bunch of individuals all going our own different ways and not looking at the big picture of things. Now, other things to bear in mind this year: there's going to be 5 eclipses. There's 2 eclipse windows. One of them starts the tail end of January with the lunar eclipse in Aquarius, in Leo, and this will continue until the 15th of February, when we have the solar eclipse in Aquarius. So whenever there's an eclipse window, generally things which have served a purpose in our lives but no longer necessary will often fall away. And when this is happening, it's better not to resist it. It's better to understand why things are coming to an end, but then letting them go so that something that we've been carrying all this time can be let go of, and we're carrying less burden around with us. The other eclipse window starts on the 13th of July with the solar eclipse in Cancer, and continue for almost a month, well over a month, just to the 11th of August. So we'll have the 13th of July for the solar eclipse in Cancer, the 27th of July for the lunar eclipse in Aquarius, and then the 11th of August is the final solar eclipse of the year, which will be in Leo. And it will also be the last eclipse in the Leo-Aquarius axis, because in November the North Node and South Node will be changing signs. The North Node will move from Leo into Cancer, South Node from Aquarius into Capricorn. And this will mark a whole new theme for us, where it's getting in touch with our roots. It's work for the North Node in Leo for most of 2018. We'll be looking at building our own self-confidence, our own self-expression, our creativity, getting in touch with the child within us and engaging in play and creativity, whilst at the same time letting go of things like aloofness, excessive detachment, a tendency to follow the crowd rather than honour the individual spark within us. So the North Node in Leo for the first 11 months of the year is about becoming the best versions of ourselves. It's taking that spark of creativity within us and turning it into a flame. It's sharing that, developing that emotional warmth, that ability to give and receive love between each other, and to nurture our creative self-expression so that we have the courage to pursue our own dreams. So we connect with our dreams and then we take action to pursue it, and we build confidence this way through seeing what we want to create and then taking action in order to manifest it. Because if we don't take any action, nothing's going to happen. One of the risks of that the South Node in Aquarius is highlighting will be, it's all very well and good knowing a load of stuff, but what use is it if you don't actually apply it in your life? What's the good of understanding the big picture if you don't actually live it? And Leo is about taking that vision and creating or manifesting it in reality through creativity, through play, through self-expression, and through developing emotional warmth to one another and encouraging each other to nurture that spark of creativity and to respect each other as individuals. So it's creating that newness of spirit rather than seeing or trying to put everyone under the same labels. It's respecting the fact that we're all unique sparks of creation. We all have that spark within us, and the health of the whole is based on each individual nurturing that spark and then sharing the warmth from it through their own creative energies, through sharing that emotional warmth with one another rather than being detached and aloof all the time. So it's a point of connection. It's developing that love for self, that self-confidence, that expressive nature within us, to connect with our creativity if we've allowed it to become dormant, and to then make something with that creativity and share it with other people. Because let's face it, if we can learn to enjoy life and embrace our own creative potentials, then when are we going to spend time just criticising other people? If we're doing what we want to do with our lives, obviously making sure that what we're doing isn't going to harm other people, it's in line with higher energies, and learning to engage with the flow at the same time. But this isn't the flow of the crowd, this is a flow of a higher energy that is above the collective consciousness. But if we can connect with this and allow it to guide us to how we can use our own creative energies to create something and to build our own confidence in the process, then this year brings a lot of opportunity for us to become much stronger individuals, much more resourceful and much more grounded. But we have to do the work of Scorpio as well, which is to transformation of the self through letting go of all the egoic fears that step in the way. Because Scorpio is also passion, but this is that fire passion that animates a person, gives them that fierceness of nature, but it lies underneath all the fears. So we have to, this year, facing our fears and getting connected. It's learning to respect and honour who we are as individuals, and respect and honour other people as individuals as well, because we're all different people. We can't just tie everyone with the same brush, because we all have the light and shadow within us. It's how we utilise these and how we maintain balance between the two, so that our actions are conscious and we're creating something, or learning to share our power with other people in mutually supportive ways, so both parties are working in mutual cooperation and mutual sharing. Because it's through building community, through transforming ourselves, but bringing our own unique spark to things rather than just hiding in the crowd. This is what's going to lead us to abundance in the long run, is letting go of that, the need to be seen as a separate individual, regard ourselves as a skin encapsulated ego, and recognise that we're much more than that. But if we want to achieve more, we also have to learn to share with other people. And if we can recognise that each one of us is just one out of over 7 billion souls on the planet, but if we become the best version of ourselves, that opens or gives other people permission to do the same if they may be too afraid to do it of their own. If we can become shining examples of humanity at its best, and by overcoming our fears and having the courage to be our true selves, this can give other people who would otherwise shy away in fear the encouragement to become their best selves, and that way the empowerment of the individual and the sovereignty of the soul is honoured, and it spreads throughout the collective consciousness rather than it just being a few of us doing it. If we can encourage other people as well to be the best versions of themselves, to let go of their fears, then 2018 holds a lot of potential for transformation, both at the personal level and the collective. But it's up to each and every one of us to do the work, rather than relying on other people or expecting other people to tell us what to do. We have to connect with wisdom, and we have to overcome the tendency to sit back, be lazy, or project our issues onto other people to avoid dealing with it. So I hope it's a useful guide for 2018. There's a lot in there, but hopefully it gives you a rough idea what's going on. So may it bring you many blessings, and may there be a lot of growth achieved in your life for 2018. Take care.